Hey everyone, so I was like literally in the middle of making a violet leaf tincture, you know, little violets, you see them come up in your yard probably, and I thought, I should be making a video of this instead. I mean, I'm gonna do it anyway, so might as well record it, right? So making a tincture with violets is crazy simple. You're gonna take your plant matter. You know, you always want to use fresh plant matter when you make a tincture. It's just safer that way. It's more well balanced. It's definitely it's just something that I always do. And so you're going to take your knife, you're going to take your plant matter, and you're going to chop it up a little bit. You're not going to turn it into a paste. We're not going to kill this plant entirely. You're going to take whatever jar that you're able to fill up all the way with your plant matter. So I'm going to start putting this chopped up violet in here. This is really not as complicated as people like to make it. You know, it's easy, I promise. You just chop up these plants a little bit, and the reason we do that is so you kind of get more of a surface area to extract from. But I don't like when people like turn it into a paste to the point where you can't even recognize the plant. And most of the time when people do that, it's because they are impatient and they don't want to wait the 6 to 8 weeks it's going to take for this to be done. And then they'll also use like really high proof alcohol, like grain alcohol, you know, and then they're like, oh, in like a week or two they'll say tincture's ready, you know. But I feel like you really miss out on a whole, well balanced, safe tincture when you do it that way. And I also, you know, I don't use dried plant matter. I think I already said that. I don't remember. But I don't use dried plant matter to make tinctures. I just don't. So violet tincture is pretty chill. She's really good for like basically like anything respiratory, like in your lungs, nasty coughs, just, you know, bronchitis, all that kind of stuff. She's also really good at bringing a fever down, which, you know, is pretty common, especially like you get to coughing and you just, you know, you get flushed with fever, and that can be from the coughing, but, you know, it tends to make the fever worse. But she's an expectorant too, so she can help you bring up that crap your lungs is trying to get out in the first place. So it's just that simple. And I like when there are blooms present just because it gives it a pretty color. Like you could just make this with violet leaf. Almost all violets are safe to eat. Like you could take these leaves and I could and cook them in a stew if I wanted to, stir fry them. They're kind of gelatinous, meaning kind of slimy, so it's best if you cook them in like in a stew with like a lot of stuff, you know. But the only violet that I don't use internally is a yellow violet, which is, some people call them pioneer violets, and that's just because some studies indicate that there's problematic alkaloids. But most people have these little purple ladies or the white ones, you know. You don't really run across the pioneer violets in yards. They're more of a high altitude in the mountain type of thing, although, you know, they are around. But I'm just here to show you how to make a tincture, so definitely do your research. So that was crazy complicated, right? Just chop it up a little bit, put it in a quart jar. I'm going to take my 100 proof vodka, and I always use 100 proof vodka because that means, I'm just popping the top off of here, that means she's 50%, I guess I could use a knife, there we go, 50% water and 50% alcohol. So the proof just equals that amount. So like if you hear 100 proof and you're like, oh, that's 100 proof alcohol, and I'm like, no, it's 50% water, 50% alcohol. So it's like already ready to use out of this jar. After we dump this vodka over the top of our plant here, and we're gonna let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks in a cool, dark place. Ooh, overfilled it a bit. And when we take it out, there's vodka running all over my pants because it's dripping through the crack in the table. You smell like a drunk. And right out of the jar, when this is ready to be decanted, which means I'm taking the vodka out of the plant matter and I'm going to press it out, it's ready to take. There's no fancy math. You don't have to add in water. You don't have to do all this thing to make it safe. It's ready because it's already 50-50. You are getting an exact dose. So you're just going to let this sit in a cool, dark place for 6 to 8 weeks. You're going to label it. I have fancy labels that I make myself here. Well, they're not fancy, but they're just like a little bit more complicated. You could use just a piece of masking tape and write violet leaf tincture and put the date on it. I gotta do a whole batch number system here. So I write down, you know, what it is, ingredients, and I weighed the plant ally out before I put her in there so I know how many ounces are on there. I write down what its name is. I write down the date. That way you know, when you made it. Although tinctures don't go bad. So like if you make this and you sit it on a shelf and you're like, oh shit, it's been a year. It doesn't matter. Vodka never goes bad. Tinctures never go bad. Now if you start using glycerites to make tinctures, they're not really tinctures, they do go bad. But anything you're making with alcohol will not go bad. And so I write the date I made it. I'm gonna pretend like I know the exact date. And then, and then like for me, I have a place on my labels that says where did I gather it from. So I write that down too. And all that information that I have to write on there is just like an intake thing that I have to do. And then I can make a batch number out of it. But you don't have to worry about that stuff. You're just making a tincture for yourself. And just like that, in 6 to 8 weeks, if I was, making this for myself, this would be like a lifetime supply. Because remember, you're taking drops at a time. You're not taking shots, you're not taking huge doses, you're taking just a few drops at a time as you need it. So you can, you're like, oh, that's expensive to buy, the 100 proof vodka, 80 proof will work too. Or, you can be overwhelmed, but like even if you use those little half pint jars, that's perfectly fine. It's just a little jar, a little bit of violets, and you have enough tincture to last you a long time. I'm just a tincture hoarder, so I make gallons a season. But anyhow, that is it. That's not complicated. Again, it's just herbs diced up a little bit, fresh plants, put into the jar, 100 proof vodka put over, cap put on, label put on, let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks, and you're good to go. It's really not complicated, and you're smart enough to do this. So, alrighty, well, I'll see you the next go around.